Welcome to the Working with Subject Matter Experts podcast. If you're responsible for keeping your business profitable into the future, you need to be managing your corporate knowledge to develop, manufacture, and deliver your best products and services. Here at the Working with Subject Matter Experts podcast, we talk about managing organizational knowledge to keep your business strong. I'm your co-host, Nathan Eckel, and we are right here with our host, Peggy Salvatore. Peggy, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing today, Nathan?
I'm doing just groovy. It's a wonderful, beautiful day out there. And it's great to be able to leverage technology and be able to capture our knowledge and be able to talk about really what the both of us think is the most crucial conversation on the planet, being able to extract all of that hidden knowledge, all of that sticky knowledge, all that hard to find invisible knowledge, and getting it out of people's heads onto paper, onto video, onto documentation so that businesses can run more efficiently, effectively, and in a more lean manner.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it was.
You summed it up very nicely.
Hey, we're passionate about it. I know there are others, but it's great to be able to have this conversation.
Well, I like being able to have this conversation with you because you jumped into this field probably a year or two before I did, and you led the way. So this is a lot of fun to talk about.
So that's great.
What do we want to talk about on this podcast today?
We want to talk about your book, Finding Your Subject Matter Experts. And we're going to talk about something that you get into pretty early in the book. You talk about the generations working together, and you talk about those millennials out there. Everybody's talking about those millennials.
That's right. They are talking about those millennials. And we have been having this discussion in HR and human resources and in training for probably 20 years. And that is, there is this thought that there are four generations working together in the workplace and that this is a challenge. The reality is that right now we have something even more unique going on. The United States Bureau of Labor Statistics released a study within the last few years showing that we literally have 5 generations in the workplace right now, which presents challenges, cultural challenges, learning challenges. I mean, the challenges of having grandpa work with granddaughter, not mom working with dad. And the kind of issues that this is bringing up in the workplace really affects the way we collect information, the way we store information, and the way we transfer it to new learners. Think about great-grandpa who's 80 years old, still working. I've worked with 2 gentlemen like this in the last year who are still vibrant and active. They could be my father. And then I'm working with people who are my kids' age. So we're really stretching across generations. Think about how grandpa can impart his knowledge to granddaughter who's used to picking up her phone and putting it in the Google search bar. So, so not only do we have to extract it from the wise folks who've been in business so long, but we need to transfer it to a generation who wants to learn in little 2-minute snippets.
So, okay, we got to back up here. Peggy, we got to reverse this truck here because we're thinking 5 generations. So as you're talking, I'm writing them down. Okay, we got to really break this down. We got to make it, we got to make it nice and simple. So we've got. Are we talking about the World War II greatest generation, the last couple of them hanging on, perhaps? Then we have the baby boomers. Then we have people like me right in the middle of Generation X. Then we have these millennials. And who's this 5th group? What's going on? Can you check my logic on that? Where am I missing it here?
Absolutely. Well, what's happened is, as I said, for the last 15 or 20 years, we've been talking about 4 generations in the workplace. Since we started having that conversation, those people started having babies. So we now have something called Gen 2020 in the workplace, which means that we have people currently entering the full-time labor force who were born after the year 2000. I mean, this is 2017. Those kids are 17 years old. They're seniors in high school. They're joining the workforce. part-time and now coming into full-time. We literally have 5 generations in the workforce, 5 very different approaches to learning and training.
So these are kids growing up and born after pretty much everybody had a dumb smartphone.
Basically, yeah.
These are people that were born pretty much on or after 9/11, and this is their world.
Exactly. It is the post-9/11 generation. Absolutely. That's how I characterize it.
Why have I never heard this before? Can you go into that a little bit?
I don't know why we haven't heard so much about it. I found it, right out online with Bureau of Labor Statistics when I was looking at the generations, and I said, we've got this generation born after the year 2000 coming full-time into the workforce this year. This is huge. This is huge. I mean, these kids, when even 20 years ago, when your baby was born, you put a rattle in their hand. Right now, once a kid can grab something, they give them a baby iPad. They're playing, they know how to swipe on a screen by the time they're a year old.
Other than commenting what everybody's thinking right now, which is fear and scary and crazy and all of that, we're just gonna, if you need to process that listening in your car and swimming laps in the pool or wherever you are right now, just hit the pause button and come back with us. I'm just gonna go right past that right now. And let's just talk about, you were talking about communication styles. You were talking about learning styles a little bit in terms of sharing information and where people go. Do they pick up the phone or do they go on Google and type in a search? What are some other, really big box categories of differences and diversity that you can think of right now, besides just how we learn and how we communicate?
I think that we are still finding out the answers to those questions, because I think we've only recently begun to realize it is a question. Some of the more traditional things that they did in the 4 generations in the workplace is learning how to work with people who are older, knowing that there could be sensory deficits, the different ways of thinking. When I was in school, and I'm a baby boomer, when I was in high school, I went to the library. I sat in among dusty stacks of books. I used to sit in a dusty old university library when I was in high school doing research in old congressional quarterlies. If I wanted to know what happened, it was way before C-SPAN. And it was fabulous. But that's the way we learned. It was very linear and it was very slow. Now everyone has access to virtually everything all the time. The implications for that are that we can become so much smarter, so much faster. But we have to make sure that we're beginning to adapt our educational system and our training systems as well to the fact that learning is instantaneous, it's constant, it's across disciplines, it's across generations.
So this is another scary possible panic point for some people listening to this, probably everybody, just because you're starting to describe a decentralization of learning from so many, not just from a storage or retrieval perspective, but just from a who is the expert perspective. What could you say to hopefully, reassure someone who's an executive or a CEO or a chairman of the board or a president or an operating officer? What could they do? What are some simple things that they might be able to do to at least head in the right direction of the best practices to be able to decentralize some information, be able to make it a little bit more accessible, maybe empower people without going in a wrong direction? What's at stake, and what are a couple things people could do?
Boy, a lot of questions there. I'm going to start with what's at stake. What's at stake is massive potential to grow into this new economy where it's global and the potential is exploding. So that's what's at stake. So not much really, right? But I also want to say that, you a couple times referred to it as scary. And I would like people to back off that concept that it's scary. It's actually very exciting. We live in a very exciting time. And to put that filter on the way you're seeing this is all of the potential that the world has and that your workers have that wasn't even possible 20 years ago. So does it present some challenges? Yes, because we're still trying to squeeze new ways of learning into old systems that we have in place. And it's going to mean changing the way that your business maybe looks at training, at its training department, the way it looks at talent development, and to be flexible. For companies that have a lot of proprietary information, it also means you're working behind a firewall, you're locking down your IT, and that needs to be considered when you're working with new workers who are really used to having access to the full range of internet capabilities 24/7. So there are some security issues, but basically it's looking at how you're providing training and how you're curating information that's coming through.
Peggy, that's great. I love your leadership perspective here, because you're really rechanneling our brains and our hearts and our emotions as leaders in a positive direction, which is where we need to be as leaders. We need to be looking forward instead of wringing our hands, staring in the rearview mirror, even as we're piloting a plane or driving the sports car down the freeway. It doesn't really work if you're looking in the rearview mirror very well. So I really appreciate that. Anything final that you'd like to add? And then what I'd like to do is just summarize the 5. Actually, I'll do that right now. What we learned today: the World War II generation, the baby boom generation, Generation X, the millennials, and then Generation 2020 that were born at the millennium. Those are the 5 generations, not 4, that are working together in the workplace right now. We're going to talk more about this in the future. What's your final word, Peggy?
I'm really excited about this subject. I think that the potential for getting these 5 generations to work together, learn together, have company story times together where knowledge gets transferred, the kind of new ideas we need to come up with to make sure that this knowledge gets transferred between generations, and it gets done in a way that respects everyone, respects everyone's autonomy, and respects their experience, whether they were born after I guess we talk about 9/11 because that's such a demarcation in the United States, certainly possibly the world. But as we look at the experience and intelligence and knowledge of that post 9/11 generation, just as much as we do the World War II generation, that people value each other and that we do this internally in our organizations.
Love it. So join us on the next Working with Subject Matter Experts podcast episode. I'm just going to give you a little sneak peek here. Join us over there because we're going to be talking about 3 different scenarios from Peggy's book, Finding Your Subject Matter Experts. 3 different scenarios for knowledge transfer. I'm your co-host, Nathan Eckel. This has been Peggy Salvatore, and we've been talking about working with subject matter experts. I'll see you on the next one.